Hello, everyone. Welcome to the roundtable discussion, how the passenger experience will define the $5 trillion transportation industry. I want to thank you all for attending. And I want to remind everyone the goal of this panel, which is to understand what are the new paradigms and technologies that will define the self-driving car experience. My name is Andres, and I will be moderating our discussion today with a set of amazing panelists that will share their experience and expertise with us today. Kyle, why don't you get started and share with us why is the passenger experience core to your company?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, hi everyone. Name's Kyle Fackler. I am the head of market management for Blacklane in the Americas region. I'm based in New York City, and what we provide, the easiest way to explain it is we are a very, very elevated competitor to Uber, Lyft, and your standard rideshare companies. However, we operate exclusively in black cars, and we have a larger B2B presence than we do B2C presence. And why the passenger experience is core to our company is quality is the high quality is our minimum standard, right? So what takes it to the next level? It's providing a really, really great passenger experience. And that begins from the second that they are looking to book their ride or looking to have someone book their ride, and ends far after the ride's done. So when we set the minimum standard as a high quality ride from point A to point B, it's actually everything else that really matters the most to us. And I would say that defines the passenger experience for us.
Wonderful. Alex, why don't you share with us, why don't you introduce yourself and share with us why is the passenger experience core to your company?
Yeah, cool. Hi, I'm Alex Giannikoulis, the founder and CEO of Ivee. The passenger experience is critical to us. It's the reason I founded the company. Kind of give you a backdrop. First, the why we exist. We came to the realization that a lot of people spend time in vehicles today and will spend even more time as passengers. So our mission is to make more of their time on the go. And you've seen this next slide that just kind of shows how much that time is going to grow with ride-hail today and eventually with self-driving cars. And time is that asset we can't make more of. So how can you make that a better ride for somebody? This next slide just kind of goes into why we started first in ride-hail. Our view is that there's dozens of passengers or a dozen personas that will come into these vehicles, and there'll be different types of vehicles. And these different types of experiences require some way of differentiating between something that's otherwise just a standard ride experience. So this is why I founded the company. And the big aha moment is kind of like user experience has big outcomes for companies. A better user experience creates better revenue for companies, as you can see here from Forrester. And the next slide, we've seen this in the airlines example, right? Where airlines have focused on a higher end passenger that has 50% of their revenues coming from 13% of their customers. So someone who is less price dependent. So that's the why. Let me tell you a little bit about us then. The passenger experience matters so much to us that it's in our name. So Ivee is an acronym. It stands for In-Vehicle Experience Enhanced. And I was a 3-time serial entrepreneur that decided I wanted to be a venture capitalist for a bit, and then decided I really wanted to go back and operate a business. And this was the business that I wanted to build. So the in-vehicle experience to me is where the differentiation is going to happen, where the profits are going to be for ride-hail services, self-driving car services in the future. What you see in the video roll is kind of showing you a little bit of what our product looks like, but it's been built, tested, running in vehicles today, both black car, Uber and Lyft vehicles as well. So that's a bit about us. I can get into product later, but I think a quick synopsis of who we are. Yeah, that kind of shows us what kind of a passenger infotainment experience looks like. You can think of us trying to digitize some of the best elements of a black car experience and start to prepare that for the future of what will be a self-driving car experience. We want to take what is artificially a 5-star experience and take that up 6, 7, 8 stars. And so maybe a good segue is one of the things we'll be doing next is with our partner Toyota Boshoku at CES. We'll be showing and announcing our immersive experiences You can maybe tee it up on the next slide. It'll show you what that interior looks like. I'm really thrilled to have Enoch on because Enoch found us last year at a mobility conference, and he is building the interior experience of self-driving cars. I think it's a good segue to have Enoch
Thanks,
show us
that's
what you're
great.
working on. Yeah.
Thanks, Enoch. Go ahead, Enoch.
Thanks. So hi, my name's Enoch, and I'm a principal designer at Toyota Boshoku. We're a tier 1 interior supplier, and as the name suggests, most of our business is seats and interior components to Toyota and Lexus. So yeah, I mean, interior and seats we believe is very core to the passenger experience, and that's our current business. And hopefully you're seeing the video kind of rolling in the background, but this is our kind of future vision of what the future of mobility might look like. We'll also be showing this at our CES booth. This is a forward-thinking autonomous mobility ride-hail vehicle, and we'll be showcasing a lot of these new technologies and features that enhances in-cabin, not just like features like the comfort, safety, but also health and wellness and monitoring the passengers' well-being. And so these things are very important to us. Our corporate motto is quality of time and space, and we really do take that to heart. Everything around the passenger, we value very much and want to improve that in the future.
Awesome. So thanks for that introduction. So why don't we get started with my first question before we really go into the large discussion. How does your company excel at defining a next level passenger experience? Kyle, why don't you get us started there?
Yeah, I'll kick us off with that. I think what we really emphasize, like I said earlier, our minimum baseline is a high quality ride from A to B, right? So you're going to get a very clean black car, a newer car, a professionally trained chauffeur, dressed professionally. That's our minimum standard. Where I think we excel is working with these chauffeurs. We really can do our best and most often do deliver on providing anything that the customer really needs, right? So you're flying to a city that you're unfamiliar with, right? You provide us your flight number. The chauffeur is going to be trained on the airport, know exactly where to pick you up. They're going to be waiting for you after baggage claim with the sign. You want to make a stop and pick up some food before you go to your hotel, before you get rest, before your business meeting. They'll make that stop for you. Try to make travel as seamless as possible for the guest so that you don't really have to think much about how you're getting from A to B. And our most common routes are airport pickups, and it's largely business travelers. And oftentimes they are familiar with the cities they're in, but a lot of times they're also not, right? So if we can make that seamless and painless for them, takes the thinking out of it, they can relax, they can focus on business, whatever they need to do. And I think that's really where we excel relative to competition.
Thanks for that. Alex, how does Ivee excel at defining the next level passenger experience?
Yeah, so we're creating software that goes into passenger vehicles today. And a key theme for us is, again, how do you take a standard ride experience and go up a star level every time? What you can expect from us today, passengers get in, they should be able to control elements of the vehicle. Today, it starts with music. You can control the music in the vehicle so that they can share it with friends or listen to their own music versus someone else's music that's playing. We've designed everything for the passengers. So when they come in, there's content that that's curated by time, day, location. And that makes that ride just a little bit better, whether they wish to relax, be entertained, or even work while they're in the ride. These are what we call ride modes. And so we think about when you get in the ride, how do you make sure that you get the most out of that time? Those are elements we start to put in control today. Over time, we're going to do more, like things like your applications following you in any Ivee-enabled vehicle. So you can imagine that your Spotify, your Netflix, your Zoom call, your Zoom account follows you in any vehicle, and then you're seamlessly getting into the thing that you need to get into to make the most of that time. And I think the bigger theme, as I mentioned, is what is otherwise a transactional kind of relationship can become an experience. And all I can tell you is we built everything for the passenger. So that to us is much different than some other technology companies that are putting infotainment systems in, designing it for the wrong stakeholder, someone who's not in the vehicle, where we actually decided to design for the passenger first.
That's important. Yeah.
Often forgotten.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, as you hopefully saw in that little video, it was a clip of our concept called MX321. And that for that concept, we really focused on not just how the passengers would experience, but also how does it make it easier for service providers to use these vehicles. They're designed to be modular, so the seats can be swapped out very easily. And we also really took to heart how to make it easier for people with different abilities, like wheelchair users, to use ride-hail vehicles easier. So hopefully you saw a little bit of that clip. So we really kind of look towards the future and how we can really improve the passenger experience overall. And I think we really excel at kind of the vision and future casting. And as a traditional tier one supplier, we believe we do the hardware part really well. Where we kind of lack is kind of the digital experience, and that's why we're so excited to work with partners like Ivee and our collaboration. Ivee bringing more of the digital experience, and us bringing the hardware, and kind of having those two sync together and really kind of making a really great experience for the passenger. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it's a very great answer to a simple question. So I want to, before we get started with the rest of the discussion, I want to remind our audience that you can send questions to the Q&A box for our panelists. So at the end of the session, we're going to respond to any questions that you may have around this topic. So let's get started. So the size of the global transportation industry is currently estimated at $5 trillion. The industry is forecasted to grow to 7.8 trillion by 2027. With that stat, in your opinion, what key trends are driving this industry's growth? Enoch, why don't you get us started with that one?
I think, first of all, I think the technology is finally kind of catching up. I think initially the industries of tend to making self-driving cars, maybe they bit off a little bit more than they could chew. But yeah, I think really now that the technology is finally catching up to the industry's attempt of what they're trying to do, and I think we're just going to see more and more growth from here on out.
Alex.
I guess a few things. It's been about 10 years or longer since some of the ride-hail, first versions of ride-hail have come out. So I think there is a customer familiarity and trust that's been built in, especially at the youthful levels. Like if you're living in an urban city and you're quite youthful, 10, 15 years ago, getting a car, having a car, parking a car was a thing you'd consider. Now there's just this thing of I'm going to have a convenient or a convenient service available at my fingertips that I don't have to have a car anymore. So I think that will just continue to grow. That behavior change has happened. I think the other thing I'm starting to see, like I look at like Blacklane's website for a while that was showing how much their customers cared about getting in and out of airports, and how much Blacklane helped people make that time connection better. And so I started to think about people are using this in some use cases around, I would rather not drive because I want to do X. And that, when people sort of think about the time element of it, obviously that's very important to us, but I think you're seeing it from others like Blacklane or from other customers and say, hey, I'm on a business trip. I'm not going to rent my car. I'm going to rent a car. I'm going to do my calls. I'm going to relax and do this other thing. So I think you'll start to see that coming from another segment of the population. And none of that has to do with self-driving cars. These are just, the service is built and I'm starting to use it in different ways.
Yeah, that's go ahead, Kai.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that. You asked about like the trends we see driving this industry, and I look actually to streaming, right? Like if you look at Netflix, HBO Max, Disney Plus, 10, 15 years ago, Netflix came out and they went from DVDs to streaming, and that in itself was groundbreaking. And now people want to be told what exactly to watch, and you want the minimum amount of clicks to be able to play something. And I think that's what we're starting to see and we'll continue to see in transportation. It's no longer going to be press a button, get a ride, or book a ride and you know it's going to be there. It's going to be what's the level of experience you get and exactly how easy is it to access that experience and what else can you do while you're on that experience, and you can optimize your time while being transported.
So, so is there a subsector or a market opportunity in this transportation industry that you consider is not being addressed currently? Alex.
Seniors. That sounds funny, right? But like, you think about the youthful generation going mobile first. But I've always thought that like the senior population, somewhere 70 years and above, right? There's just this element of, I don't want to drive or maintain this car anymore. And there's a safety element behind it. And I think that is a segment that is not being very addressed, that I've seen that's being addressed very well. That over time could be bigger, especially in like aging in countries with aging populations. And this is what I mean about new paradigms kind of coming up. They kind of say, hey, I would rather have my dad be transported by this service than having him, drive at night or drive long distances. So that's one of them. There's others, but yeah.
Kyle, which ones have you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, talking a little bit more about Blacklane, right? It's what I see is you don't have a global player in the luxury rideshare space, right? I mean, you have Uber, Lyft, Didi, you have all these major players, and they do have higher end offerings. What I see them lacking, and for context for everyone, I previously did work at Uber in 2015 to 2017, very familiar with the product. Its consistency is lacking. And I think that's what we are aiming to bring to this industry. We're not trying to compete with UberX and Lyft's regular product, right? Those are extreme scale, high frequency, high volume. That's not what we're in. We want to be able to provide a high quality, reliable experience globally where you can get on a flight in the morning in New York on your way to JFK. You can land anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the world, honestly, Asia, Europe, it doesn't matter, South America, Africa, and you're going to get the same experience when you land there. And you're going to have that confidence and that seamless experience from not just airport to your hotel or your home to the airport, but from your home to your hotel on the other side of the world.
Enoch, how about you?
Yeah, I'm glad, Alex, you brought up seniors because, yeah, I was also going to say we look to healthcare and wellness. Might come as a surprise to some people, like why is the interior supplier interested in healthcare? But I think that's an opportunity for the aging population to constantly be able to monitor them while they're on the go. The seats is a unique part of a vehicle because that's the one place that you should, have constant, physical contact with a passenger inside a vehicle. And so being able to use that feature as a way to monitor and make sure that passengers are healthy, and if there, ever is a need to reroute to an emergency or call services, that that's something that we're looking toward to in the future as well. So yeah.
Hey, Enoch, could you don't have to, but if you could maybe tease out what kinds of sensors and things could be in the vehicle or are in the vehicle or in seats that help around health and wellness? Like for those that may not know, what are the kind of things that?
Yeah, I mean, there already are a bunch of, sensors all around, even in vehicles, in production today. Like, the cameras are looking at your eyes, and if you have adaptive cruise control and you stare off into the distance for a little bit too long, the vehicle will notify you and say, hey, you should be looking forward. So, cameras, radars, LiDAR, infrared cameras, it runs the gamut. So yeah, it's already here, and it's only going to get more and more advanced. Yeah.
That's a
I've
good
seen like
segue.
those the weight where they can tell how much weight. Obviously, you know that today in the vehicle. Heartbeat monitoring systems where you can tell like anxiety or sleep. Hey, this person's falling asleep. Wake them up. A lot of cool sensors when you put them together. Yeah.
Definitely. That's part of the experience, right? Yeah, that's interesting. So that's a good segue into this next stats that I'm going to share with you. So the self-driving industry is expected to grow to $200 billion by 2030, with 5 cities in the United States already using robotaxis. So what opportunities do you see for expansion into other major cities? So this is let's say a 3-part question. What opportunities do you see, and what's the timeline of those opportunities? What do you envision adoption rates to look like in the near future? So opportunities, timeline, and adoption rates. Kyle.
Yeah. So a little bit of an interesting topic for me to talk about, right? Since we talked so much about the chauffeur experience of Blacklane and having that end-to-end service with them. But on self-driving, I think so opportunities, any city with super high traffic congestion. I live in New York City. It's probably the worst in the US with traffic congestion. So I think self-driving cars can solve problems there because it's one car that could always be on the road pending charging time, et cetera. But you can have that car on the road. It's serving a lot more passengers than a passenger owning their own car can serve, right? So I think your opportunities are to reduce traffic congestion. They can be safer. In 2015, self-driving was talked a lot about at Uber. And I think one of the biggest things that we always discussed was there's kind of like a critical mass of self-driving cars you have to get on the road. But then when you get to that point, the road becomes significantly safer because you're removing a lot of human decision-making and variability from the whole dynamic of road travel, right? So there's a huge opportunity, right? Just safety in general, but that does take a critical mass to get there. Adoption rates, I think you're going to see, Alex had talked about younger generations in urban areas, higher adoption rates in urban areas where people might be walking around the streets and seeing these cars already and be somewhat familiar with it and feel safer getting in. And then, sorry, what was the last piece? Timeline?
Timeline, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very, very hard to tell. I think that, like you said, we're already seeing it. I think I just actually saw today that Cruise launched in Austin and maybe Phoenix within the last 2 days when they previously weren't operating there. So I think we're approaching 2023. I think that my best prediction is by 2026, 2027, you're going to see self-driving taxis being somewhat of a staple in your major metropolitan areas in the US, at least those that are really, really flat and grid-like design. And I mean, I personally hope by 2030, we're seeing a lot more where people are actually using them as their personal cars. And sorry if you guys hear sirens in the background. It's New York for you.
Typical New York, yeah. Enoch, is there anything that Kyle missed, or do you agree with him on the timeline that he discussed?
Yeah, I generally agree. Like I also, don't have a crystal ball, so I can't give exact numbers. But I think, given the current pool of, the 5 cities, the New Yorks, the Phoenix, the San Franciscos, the world. Once it proves out that it's safe and people get comfortable with it, I think there'll be a gradual rollout to kind of the secondary other major metropolitan areas. I'm speaking within the US specifically. And then I think after like a gradual increase, then again, once it reaches a critical mass, then we'll see more wide adoption. Can't really speak to other parts of the world since I'm not quite as familiar, but I would generally think I would kind of follow a similar trend as well. Yeah.
How about you, Alex? Any
I'll take the
opportunities?
international. I'll take the international part on the opportunities kind of timeline. So, prior to starting Ivee, I was at Graphene Ventures. We invested in Lyft in several rounds, and a company called Zoom that does pick up and drop off of children. So we started researching self-driving technologies, and countries like Singapore, the United Arab Emirates, and Norway kind of caught my attention because smaller governments, kind of from federal down to municipal, was almost like kind of streamlined, and smaller footprints of cities. Some of them growing quite quickly, like UAE, and they were quite prominent about like getting this as a way to either eliminate traffic congestion in Singapore, as an example, or to just be kind of forward-looking, like in the UAE. The UAE, the Sheikh Mohammed had come out and said that by 2030, his goal is to have 25% of the vehicles being self-driving. And so, what I would offer to the panel is that this is such a large industry that one or two cities starting to make moves is gonna create a lot more momentum than we may think, and give city planners, governments kind of examples of how to do it. And I think the thing that people may not realize is like transportation is something that everybody here, it affects everyone here and uses it on a daily basis. And it can be a big GDP outcome or economic improvement for a city, similar to like subways when they first came in, or public transport when they first came in. You're going to start to see that it will have this kind of mass effect. So maybe slow kind of now, feeling like it's slow, but when it starts to really catch on, even if it's abroad, I think you'll start to see that coming out even faster.
One thing to add to that, Alex, just a fact that I remembered that was shared to me back in the day, which I found interesting, is the more, especially self-driving, the more self-driving cars that you can get on the road, especially in a major city, the less need you have for resident-owned cars, the less need you have for parking structures. And this is a very long-term way of thinking, but when apartments are building, if you have an apartment building with a parking garage underneath, that significantly increases your cost and reduces your space, right? So you have to charge higher rents, and you're reducing the amount of space. So you actually have to charge even higher rents because that space that could have been used for rental units or storefronts or et cetera, you're now using for cars, right? So if you remove the need for parking structures, the actual construction build cost is way lower. You have more space for residents or for storefronts, and you could start to actually make living in a city significantly more affordable in places that you might have not directly tied to self-driving cars.
That's great. Yeah. Also, Kyle, like I don't believe that when self-driving cars come, 100% of the cars go away, right? I still think, like to your point, that there'll be less cars, but there will be people that want to have professional driven cars, and they'll have a relationship with a provider like Blacklane and a chauffeur that they really enjoy. Or some of them just say, like, I still want to drive my car. It is such a large industry that, like, even if you have 10% as self-driving, 20%, 30%, there's gonna be a lot of different flavors, and you can have, still have reduction in traffic. The example I kind of give is like, think of Amazon in 94 to 2000, right? People are like, oh, this e-commerce thing, it's too small, it's not going to go anywhere. Fast forward 20 years later, retail is maybe 10% is e-commerce, maybe up to 20% after 2020. My point is, people still go into a physical space still, and they use that, the retail person in a different way than they would just browsing. So I don't believe that when it's not fully binary to me. When self-driving cars come, there are no professional drivers. There is no self-driven experience. I just think it will be less.
Agree completely, right? Like it's going to be hard to use a self-driving car for a road trip, right? You might not want to use a self-driving car for a road trip. The first self-driving cars we see are going to be highly programmed, set fixed routes within cities.
Yeah.
it's not going to be able to take you on even a 4 or 5 hour road trip. You're still going to need your own car or rental car for that, or you might want to be driven by a chauffeur service, right? So it's going to be a relationship where these all have to coexist. But I think once a couple cities really figure out how to make it coexist, it will take off quickly.
Yeah, so you discussed this a little bit, Alex, but there's a report seen in Bloomberg, highlighting the lack of progress in self-driving vehicles, even after $100 billion were invested in the industry. So how do you feel about this statement?
Short-sighted.
Short-sighted.
Like 100 billion, maybe, okay, they overinvested too quickly and so forth. But if you play out the long-term ramifications of this, it is a game-changing technology. And I think the thing that's just kind of unfair, right, is we expect this technology to be safer than a human. The question is, how much safer shall it be, right? And so is 2x safer good? No, it's got to be at least 10x or maybe even 100x. Well, that becomes difficult to start to, like, because if you can start to say, do I trust a self-driving car more than I trust a human who may be distracted? Me personally, I trust the computer. Like it has it has cameras that are always on, and that has multiple levels of detection. But not everyone has that safety feeling yet. That to me is the lag. It's not that the technology is not there. I also think, just one last point will be that today you can't walk on a highway, right? You can't bike on a highway, right? These designated lanes are for designated things. When you start to have infrastructure that becomes designated for certain aspects, professionally driven vehicles only, self-driving vehicles only, then you can start to eliminate, me, the idiot that shows up in New York City trying to find out where to go and I'm driving the wrong way or hovering around for parking. If you can kind of think about that over time, designated lanes and infrastructure starts to change that. Then I think this thing about it's not here yet is, to me, in my mind, it's just short-sighted. Wait for it, and you'll see the stacking impact.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Enoch, you.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree, and I also think kind of in the first wave, I would say like a lot of companies try to take the whole pie in terms of like they want to develop the vehicle and the self-driving tech and the UI, and developing a vehicle is not cheap and it's really difficult and it takes a lot of time, and we're talking about a fundamental shift that could be as big as the shift from a horse-drawn carriage to the first automobiles, because cars really hasn't changed that much ever since its inception, really. I mean, now we have a different powertrain now, but people still drive it with the steering wheel, and so this is a real fundamental shift. So yes, it's going to take time and money, and it's not going to be built overnight. And now I think companies like, I mean, I'll just use Waymo as an example, is, they're not developing their own car. They're focusing just on the self-driving technology, and they're using an existing vehicle platform. So they're taking smaller pieces of the pie, but really focusing on their core strengths and leaning on the partnerships of partners that, are more experienced or better equipped in providing the other pieces. And when it all comes together, hopefully it's a cohesive and better experience. So that's kind of my thought on the whole investment and audio side of this piece. Yeah.
I was going to add mostly the same stuff and then a little bit more. I do think that everyone just bit off more than everyone could chew early on with self-driving. It was like this really great idea of like, oh, if we can replace all these cars on the road, you don't need the cost of drivers. You don't have, like, it's all robotics and it's going to be safe and everything. And no one's going to adopt it that quickly. And it takes a while to develop all this stuff. But I could see this going in a way where you focus more on niche markets and practical use cases, public use cases of autonomous vehicles. I mean, if you were to think of the example of an ambulance, I know Enoch talked about healthcare with the seats in the car, but think about if you had an ambulance that was a much smoother ride, operated by a robot, didn't have a huge motor. And if you look at a typical ambulance, you have what? A driver, if not also a passenger EMT and an EMT in the back to address one person. If you have a car that doesn't, an ambulance that doesn't require a driver, you have more space. And you could also maybe have one employee in that ambulance serving one person who needs attention. And now you have 3 employees in 3 ambulances versus 3 in 1. You have to maybe show people the practical use cases first, and then they will adopt it for what, like leisure travel. I think that that's something that hasn't been addressed yet, but I think it could be a very, very big use case, and ambulances are just one of many, many examples.
Yes, it's very insightful. Anything else to add here, Alex or Enoch? All right, so let's move. So Kyle, I'll leave you for last in this next question because you've been highlighting the answer to this question. So Uber, Lyft, and Didi have achieved market dominance in the US, Europe, and China with over 50 million rides per day. So what does a new market entrant need to have to effectively compete with industry behemoths? Alex.
Yeah, I think when it's a $5 trillion industry, if you take 10x under that and 10x still, you're starting to talk about like hundreds of billions of dollars of industry still. So niches of niches have the riches are in the niches, right? So there's niches in here that can be quite large and very profitable. I'm going to steal the Kyle thing because I really believe it. Kyle, the consistent user experience, I think, is the challenge that the big companies have. Certainly Blacklane has it, but Alto, Captain, there's a bunch of others that have focused on a more dedicated footprint with a consistent user experience. I think that's one. For me, I would say I think the experience layer and like doing cool things in vehicles, I think is really cool, right? And I'll give you just examples of like people doing fun things in vehicles that we've seen with our technology. We've done a cash cab activation. We've done karaoke. We've done spa experiences. Like we have these things with data, and we have rich proprietary data of would I use this service more often? Would I switch an operator? Would I pay more? So that's closely guarded for us because that's the thing that we think will enhance or get kind of ways to compete with really large incumbents. Yeah.
Alex, I have a follow-up question to that. So this industry is obviously, you mentioned having cool things. What happens when we enter into a recessionary period where people cannot just, cannot afford the cool things in the experience? How do you envision this being sort of defend itself from the cyclicality of the economy?
Yeah, I'll give you something close by. Our business in March of 2020 was severely affected by COVID, right? You think about what we had. We had vehicles and screens. Our testing parameters were, will people touch the screen, right? Which was predicated on, will there be people in vehicles? So March 22nd, we pulled out tablets and we go dark from operating until December of 2020. In that time, we built software, we get relationships and so forth. When we go back out to market in December of 2020, we go to Miami for a few reasons. This is pre-vaccines. And our worry is, A, if we put these tablets in vehicles, will there be enough people getting in? And the second question we had was, will people interact, right? But what we found is that there were fewer vehicles on the road, but the demand was still there. And I think that's one thing we didn't really realize is like, hey, there's still a lot of people going out at night, even in the pre-vaccine periods, and worried. And so when it is a very, very large market, even in a recessionary period, I can imagine that these things will still have high utilization. Every vehicle of ours has about 200 people that come in every month on average. And then in terms of your question around like price, I think there's a class of service where people care a lot about the quality of experience or time. And those people tend to be pretty price inelastic. So the volumes may dip a bit, but I think the price thing for the type of consumer we're going after, the kind of 20% of top 20%, we're pretty optimistic on that. I don't think that'll be a massive downfall. Yeah.
Kyle, is he agreeing with Alex? Is there anything you would like to add there?
Yeah, I mean, on the price and elasticity piece, I see it to be true, right? I think a lot of the passengers we're trying to attract, of course, money matters to them and cost is always a top consideration, but I actually think they're mostly people that value time more than their money, right? Or at least equal, or they treat it the same. And even in a recession, if you can provide them a seamless, consistent experience, and they know they're able to focus on other things while they're with you, they trust you, they feel safe, then they're still going to use you, right? Because if they're treating time and money the same in a recession, if it's all the same resource to them, it's still scarce, right? So getting that, optimizing that time for them is still going to be almost as important, if not more important, than optimizing the cost. I'll let Enoch go in, but before I talk about the Uber Lyft DD thing. But yeah, I just wanted to add to that there.
Yeah, Enoch, go ahead. What does a new market entrant need to have to compete?
Yeah, no, I really don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really do think it comes down to the user experience, and what Blacklane does, being kind of the top of the top, luxury. That's a clear segment, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be luxury. But you see cars that are with drivers that are doing double time for both Uber and Lyft. So you're kind of getting a very similar and not a very clear experience, and it really comes down to just kind of a cost comparison at times. So I think a new player who really wants to come in and compete, does need to provide a unique experience. And what Alex said about having karaoke, or some of these new experiences that you wouldn't be able to have anywhere else, I think is what's going to set you apart from the competition.
This is very helpful and insightful too. So thanks for that. Before I go into the next question, I want to remind the audience to send questions using the Q&A chat box, so that our panelists can answer them in the last 15 minutes of our panel here. So I want to ask one final question. What is an important fact that you know about the mobility as a service industry that you know, but that most people don't?
Wow. One thing is, I think people underestimate how much vehicles will be used on a constant basis. Privately owned vehicle on average is used 4 to 5% of the time, and the rest sits in your garage or your driveway. So if we're talking about weather driven or autonomous vehicles that are constantly on the road for multiple hours a day, it's going to go through a lot of wear and tear. So especially us as an interior supplier, we need to build seats that are way more robust than what is currently available, or it needs to be designed in a way that can be easily replaced or easily cleaned, because the constant coming and going of people getting in and out, it's on a magnitude, scale greater than what vehicles are seeing today. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a tidbit there.
Alex.
I'll go last. I'll let Kyle. You go, Kyle.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Cool. I think kind of two things for me. One is when you're talking about a company like Blacklane or even in Uber Lyft, right? Where I would say we're in the luxury space, they're in the scale economy space. Mostly they have the luxury pieces as well. The importance of making the job easy for the chauffeur or the driver in their case, right? They really want to provide a top-notch passenger experience. I think of all the chauffeurs I've talked to, they take a lot of pride in how clean they keep their car and how they take care of their car. But the thing they take the most pride in is, what is that passenger feeling when they get in and when they get out of the car? And are they making their life easier? And how do we as a company make sure that they're able to provide that? We make their job as easy as possible, right? So make sure that they have accurate pickup and drop off instructions, make sure they're clear on any special requests, make sure that they're not worried about getting paid on time. If you make doing their job easier for them, they're going to be able to do what they're really passionate about, which is enhancing the passenger experience. And then another piece is, and I don't want to say surprised, but I didn't think this would be as important to them, is they want to bring extras into the car to enhance the experience, right? And we're partnering with Ivee to put screens in cars in LA. We have them right now, and the feedback is great from the guests, but also from the chauffeurs. And they're talking about how great it is that when they have a family in the car, or they're asked to take kids somewhere for a client of theirs, the kids can throw on Netflix or Disney Plus in the back, and they're watching it on the screen. And it makes the chauffeurs proud to be able to provide that experience, and it makes it great all around. So I think that often gets overlooked, of how important they are to the experience, and how giving them the tools to make their job easier and their lives easier actually greatly enhances things for the passengers in turn.
Alex.
Yeah, cool. I'll do two. I'll do emotion and talk a little bit about Blacklane, and then I'll do interiors and talk about Toyota Boshoku. So on the emotion side, there was a magic when you could, at your fingertips, press a button and a car arrived, and that was really cool for a period of time, for quite a period. But in the past 5 or 7 years, that hasn't changed. And things that we think about a lot, and we're starting to see impact, is when people interact or have a different experience in a vehicle, we ask and try to find out, how did it make you feel? And so a lot of the things that we're designing is like an emotional based approach. And so I feel relaxed, I feel happy, I feel entertained, I feel productive, right? Blacklane does that in the sense that you feel pampered and feel safe and feel next level. You have this emotion that you wouldn't get on a standard type, scale type experience like Kyle mentioned. On the interior part, I think a thing overlooked is like, when you can redesign the interior of the vehicle and think about space in a whole different way, you think about a flat surface, you think about taking out the front steering wheel, what you can do with it. I mean, in 2018, when Toyota did their e-Palette keynote, I mean, that thing spoke to me. Like, that is the kind of thing we want to create. And I guess the thing underneath that I think is surprising maybe to others is a lot of the technology they're trying to put into those future vehicles is actually here today. So with Toyota Boshoku at CES, we'll do a privacy audio integration. This headrest allows you to create a sound bubble that you and I next to each other can't hear each other's content, and you could have a private Zoom call or just listen to music in a sound bubble. That stuff's been around for a while. The challenge has been when you have a expensive piece of technology that is utilized, to Enoch's point, 4% of the time, it's a very expensive lift for somebody to take in their own personal vehicle. Well, you can multiply that and have a 96% or 80% utilization. Now you can have really expensive equipment, interiors, items that are next level, that are much better than I would get in my own car or in someone else's. So those are two cool things coming that actually tie this conversation together. And most people don't know, right? Like, we talk to our friends about these things, and they're kind of like, "Oh, I didn't know that was possible."
Well, they can come and see it themselves at CES.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I mean, I didn't know that, so I'm a bit surprised by the facts too. So it's nice. So I want to shift into the last 10 minutes with a Q&A session. We have one question for each of you. So I'll start with Kyle. How does Blacklane attract and retain customers in an environment where consumers can download an app like Uber or Lyft and book a premium ride within minutes or schedule one for a specific time?
Yeah, so I think our biggest channel right now is actually attracting them through B2B usage, right? And what we're obviously constantly talking about is how can we better attract customers at all times. what we really want to do is make it easier for someone to convert from a B2B customer to a B2C user, right? So with Uber, Lyft, they have Uber for Business. I'm sure Lyft has a business arm, right, where you can set up a corporate account and you can have your employees, investors, clients, whomever book on your behalf, right? And you pay for it. We also do that, but what we are targeting is companies that want to always provide a high-class luxury ride. They want the reliability. The vast majority of our business is pre-booked. We do have an on-demand product in some cities, but the vast majority is pre-booked. And what our customers really enjoy about that is, okay, let's say you're a consultant, you're flying out on Monday, flying home on Thursday. You have either a travel manager or an assistant who books for you. They book it a week in advance. You know, okay, 8 a.m. Monday, it's got to be up and outside my house. I don't have to do anything. The ride will be there, right? And so we can attract the corporate clients by way of the reliability globally, the fact that you have the same experience around the world. And then what we do a good job of and can do a much, much better job of is converting those users to B2C customers when they're traveling personally, if there's someone who would want to spend money on a Blacklane, right? I mean, we're not unaware of the fact that we're a high-end product and we're not seen as a cheap economy option, and we don't want to be, right? So we're understanding that not everyone who uses us on B2B will use us B2C, but there are a lot of people who will. And I think that's going to be one of our most effective channels moving forward is converting those B2B users.
Also, maybe Kyle, like as an outsider, I think having a car reserved on my behalf by someone, my company or a client, and having it be a Blacklane come and pick me up automatically just elevates how I feel about that company or the client, or right. It's a different experience that I'm getting. That, you know, I'm not getting you a standard vehicle. I'm getting you a Blacklane experience, and the fact that like at the airport, your chauffeurs come and greet you and wait for you, like, and to carry your bags out, like that is fundamentally different than others. And I think once people experience that, it's, you know, try not to go back. Like,
yeah, and to add to this once more, to tie back in with Ivee, right? Like if we have an Ivee tablet in the car and it's got a really clean display, it's really engaging, we can use that as as a way to attract customers that are having the ride booked for them, right? You have this great experience, chauffeur meets you after baggage claim, takes your bags for you, walks you to the car, opens the door, the car's immaculate, and you have this really great experience that you can either choose to engage with, or in a clean way, you can choose to opt out of it. But that might have really clean instructions for how to download the app and become a user on your own. So yeah, like you said, the experience speaks for itself, and then it's just of getting them to download the app and want to use it on their own.
Enoch, we have a question for you in the Q&A box. How does Toyota think about the evolution of auto software in an environment where Tesla is pushing out software updates to its global network of vehicles, and where BMW is building cars with full feature sets to which drivers can subscribe a la carte for monthly fees?
Yeah. Is the question specifically about Toyota cars, or because to be clear, we're part of the Toyota group, but we're a separate company. Toyota does make up 90% of our business, but we also do supply to other OEMs as well. So to try and answer the question, right now we don't really are involved in the vehicle UI in terms of the actual, you know, what controls the car itself. But when it comes to certain interior features, like our collaboration with Ivee, or if there's a passenger monitoring system, or things of that nature that are specifically interior focused, we want to have greater control. Of course, it needs to work with the overall vehicle's overall, you know, CPU and their system. But it's hard for me to say on behalf of Toyota Boshoku because we only supply the interior components currently. I don't know if that's a really satisfactory answer and what they're looking for, but I would say overall, kind of we're already seeing these over-the-air updates becoming more and more commonplace, regardless of who the OEM is. I think it's only going to become more commonplace and be able to upgrade more. How people feel about that as a cash grab versus a real value add, I think it really comes down to what features the companies provide in those updates and how much they charge. And yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Sure it did. So Alex, to conclude the panel here, there's a Q&A question for you. So what are some of the most popular ways in which writers are engaging with the Ivee product? And what future features do writers evidence that they want?
Yeah, that's great. So simple things. This is a 10-inch screen, and it's the UI looks similar to like a Netflix example. And so while the ride modes are curated and the content that's there is curated, video tends to be the biggest thing people start to interact with. And I think one of it is it's native. You understand it. You can click on it, sit back, lean back, and enjoy. Whereas, doing it on a 6-inch phone and leaning over, isn't the most enjoyable experience for 5, 10, 30 minutes or more. So video tends to be the biggest app. The next one, which was surprising to us, was music. And the reason I say it's surprising is because the first 2 versions of our release on music, you could only choose a genre, and you can't get deeper into an artist or a song. And we don't know who the passenger is before, so we couldn't even populate with likes and preferences and so forth. And yet people used it, and we are just following the data, Andres. We're just saying, okay, hey, people use it, make it more prominent, give more options. But I think what we're seeing, what we're inferring here, is that people are either trying to control the cabin. I don't want to hear someone else's, news or music. I want mine. I want to share it with somebody, or I'm in discovery mode. And I think that to us is very important, because some of this thing about I have all the personalized preferences I want here, that does not mean that I'm not open to other suggestions or kind of cool things to discover. So those are the things that today people are interacting with. The next things everyone's asking with that we just got to do is personalized applications that follow you into any vehicle that is Ivee enabled. And so the first thing to do for that is to get partnerships such as Blacklane and others, where we can start to have a set of vehicles that have Ivee inside. You register, and then they can follow you elsewhere. So I'm pleased that the stage of the company has gotten the first part around, getting that access to do integrations with operators. And then the last thing people want is like that immersive part, right? Like next level, I want to feel my content. Like we did relaxing rides with massage capability and immersive with haptic. About 40,000 of those rides already. And back to my earlier comment around emotion, people are like, this makes me feel fill in the blank, where normally you don't get that in another ride. So those are some of the things we'll be putting out, and we're just following data. We're just seeing what people are choosing and interacting with. Yeah.
And that's important. It goes back to full circle to what you indicated first, which is listening to the rider, right? Rather than listening to the people who are outside of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to thank all of you, Kyle, Enoch, Alex, for today's discussion. It was highly insightful. I want to thank our audience for sending questions, for listening in to this discussion. And I want to encourage everyone to reach out to Alex, Kyle, and to Enoch to discuss their insights, identify market opportunities, and to answer any questions that you may have following this discussion. So again, thank you all for today.